All right, so welcome to my home state. I am going through each state individually with all the statutes, all the explanation of exemptions. So it takes a while, but I'm here at Florida finally, born and raised. So let's get to it. Now, if you're in Florida and you're filing for bankruptcy, in this blog post, there'll be a description, a link in the description. You'll see what's available in the blog post. You have information on the bankruptcy court system. There are three districts in Florida: middle, southern, and northern. All that contact information is there, as well as all the trustees. And I do give an explanation in a blog post as well as how exemptions work, which is what I'm going to do here, but this is just in the video format. So, Florida, there is a lot of bankruptcies filed here. This has always kind of been known as a mecca for debtors, right? It is some of the most favorable exemptions that you have. We'll go over exemptions in a second. But you see here, we do have the three I had mentioned, the middle, the southern, and the northern. I practiced here for most of my life. Now I'm over here. The middle district is by far the largest. Literally, if you look at it, it seems like it takes up three-quarters of Florida. The southern district is Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, and Monroe County too. So if you're filing, if you live in the Keys and you file for bankruptcy, you're going to be in the southern district, and your case will go into the Miami division. Now, the good news is, back in the old days, we had the debtor had to do all this driving, even if they lived in Key West. Chances are now the hearing is going to be held remotely. If it's not going to be held remotely, it's because the trustee does have the option. Maybe it's a case that they don't feel comfortable with and they want to be able to maybe dig into details, maybe even see how your reactions are. Some of the trustees will hold the hearings by phone, others will do it via Zoom. So you got to be prepared with Zoom. Now, I will say this, the 341 meeting, when you go to it, you'll have a link that tells you what the access code is and all that. If you feel uncomfortable about the situation, just try to figure out what other hearings are taking place, even though you should have, unless your hearing's the first one at 9 a.m., just listening to two or three hearings is more than enough. But if you can pick up on another trustee or even that same trustee and you can listen in by phone or watch it by Zoom, you'll feel comfortable with the process and you'll see how it is. Okay. Now, in Florida, we have a lot of people moving into Florida and moving out of Florida. The example, even in class I gave today, I live so close to the Georgia border that it's common to see people from Georgia working in Florida or have spouses or domestic partners in Florida, but they live in Georgia. Now, why is that important? Because you have to figure out where you're going to file for bankruptcy. You can't pick and choose the state that you like the best. And so this is where it gets important because there's a couple of dates you have to keep in mind. First place, what if you are moving to or from Florida? Before you file here, you have to have lived here at least 91 days out of the last 180 days. If you did that, you can file, but you don't get the exemptions of the Florida exemptions, which are unlimited homestead. So, for example, using my Georgia example, if you live, I don't know, whatever town is the first one when you enter Georgia, Georgia only offers $21,500 in exemptions. It's not a lot. You have $100,000 in equity in your home and only 21,500 is protected. You can see the problem that creates. So the issue now is, where do you file? Well, just because you've been here for 180 days doesn't mean you used Florida exemptions. It just means you can file in Florida. So what is a 730-day rule? Well, that is how long you have to live here in order to receive the benefits of the Florida exemptions. So if you're in Georgia and you say, wow, the exemptions in Florida are better for me, maybe I should relocate to Florida. Fine. After 2 years, you get to use those exemptions. And to be clear, this applies to every single state. So I don't care if you're living in Texas and you're trying to figure out how to file for bankruptcy in Texas. The answer is the 180 and 730-day rule applies to you too. Remember, federal law is nationwide. The only difference are the exemptions, which varies by state. And the reason for that is because the bankruptcy code allows the states to choose their own exemptions or to use federal exemptions. So you need to focus on those two dates. But let's throw a wrinkle in here. I mentioned having equity in a home in Georgia. So suppose I live in Atlanta. That's the closest I can figure out. If you live in Atlanta, you say, well, I'm going to move to Florida, and after 2 years, I can file for bankruptcy using their exemptions. Absolutely. But if you have homestead that you had in Atlanta and now you bought a home in Florida, guess what? Those numbers, we're going to tack on another year to it. Now you have to own that home 1,215 days. Now, this is important because the way I just describe it, it's not to your benefit. Well, it is, but you have to wait it out for 3 years if you're living in Georgia. But let's say you're moving from Miami, where I'm from, you're moving to Atlanta, and then you're thinking about filing for bankruptcy. That's when you have to look at which one favors me. You're going to go back and say, oh, Georgia only has $21,000, 20,500 as an exemption. Florida has unlimited exemption. Let me go ahead now and file in Florida just to protect myself and protect all that equity. So literally you can file for bankruptcy, wipe out all your debt, all your credit cards and personal loans, and then move to Atlanta with a chunk of change. And you're not even obligated to buy a home. You can rent it, just sit on that money, or do whatever you want to do. So that's why it's important to know. Obviously, we can't always figure out where we're moving to, if we're going to move at all. These things just happen. Maybe it's a job offer. But if you somehow know, oh, I'm going to be living here in 6 months, a year, whatever. Now it's time to figure out what am I going to do? What are the exemptions in that state? What are the exemptions in my state? Which one am I going to go for? Typically, because Florida has such a good exemptions when it comes to the homestead 100% equity, it's better to file in Florida unless your home has no equity and you're moving into Florida. Now, I did put here, I did say a second ago that the bankruptcy code does allow for states to have their own exemptions or to have federal exemptions. Some states, not many, I think maybe it's 18, allow you to pick one or the other. And again, you're going to pick the one that favors you. If the federal exemptions favor you, then you go ahead and do that. If your state allows that, Florida does not. Florida depends 100% on state exemptions, so there is no federal exemptions that you can guide yourself by. Now, there's a couple of more things I want to talk about when it comes to exemptions in Florida. First, let me jump all the way down here and talk about research, 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 and research some more. I use software, so I know I'm up to date when it comes to the statutes and the amounts and everything. That software gets updated all the time. But you might read a lot of blogs out there. If it's lawyer blogs, like lawyer to bring in business to the law firm, not kind of like my blog, bankruptcy.blog, which is more about explaining. I'm not looking for clients through that. Um, you those blogs tend to not get updated. So it wasn't too long ago, almost a year now, that Florida upped their protection for cars from 1,000 to 5,000. I keep telling this to my students, and they keep putting down $1,000 as the exemption when I give them the essay exams. So you have to do your research because we're at Florida now. I've gone through all the other states, right? Alabama, Alaska, Delaware, Connecticut. And there's one constant theme that I'm finding, and that is there's a lot of outdated information out there. I've even gone to state websites where the states don't even have their information updated. And you can use AI all you want. AI, I read an article today about how many errors are being found consistently with AI. But the problem is also that with AI, they go by the information that's out there, and it might be that information where it is outdated. And if that's the case, you can see the problem when you list the wrong numbers. Maybe you go from an asset that shouldn't have been protected, but you thought that it was, and now you got a problem on your hand because a trustee is going to say, I want that asset. So I know state statutes should be up to date, but they're not. So that means just not looking at the state statute, but looking at everything else. Look at all the other resources you can find. And when you see that the theme is consistent and the numbers are consistent, by all means, you probably got it. But you have to do your research because I'm just finding errors every single time, either statutes that don't exist or statutes that have been updated with the amounts that have been updated as well. So keep that in mind. Now, I put here burial plots because it's just like a personal issue with me. A lot of the states I've covered so far do protect cemetery lots and burial plots. Florida does not. And so if you're at a certain age and you've already paid off your lot, here's the problem. It's not protected. So how much is protected? It'll either be 1,000 or 4,000. I'll get to that in a second. But the problem is these things are expensive. 10, 15,000. I think my father's years ago, I paid, God, like 10,000 for it. So Imagine if I had a $4,000 protection exemption, I still have $6,000 that's not protected that the trustee is going to say, give me 6,000 or give me that cemetery plot. And as creepy as it sounds, you say, well, I bought it to be next to my wife in eternity. Trustee doesn't care about eternity. They care about today, and they're going to sell it. And trust me, there's going to be a person who could care less about the creepiness and say, I'm going to be buried to, was supposed to be this guy's spouse. I'm going to be buried there. It happens all the time. If you don't believe me, go ahead and file it. And when the trustee says, give me your cemetery plot, you'll see that I was 100% correct. So you have to be careful because in Florida, they do not have that protection. That's why I put it there. It's kind of bad when you have a client who's elderly and you say, yeah, sorry, it's not going to be protected. I don't know what I could tell you, but we have a problem and now you have to figure out how to pay that back. Okay. Now, I do have here two numbers for you, and you wonder why do we have two different types of exemptions? Well, that's because we call the wild card exemption. Some states have a wild card exemption. The best way I can describe it is if it's not this, then use this one. And Florida is one of those states. They have 1,000 and 4,000, as you see there. Let me clean this up a little bit because I wrote over it. What does it mean? Well, in Florida, if you own a home and you got this full protection, they're not going to protect $4,000 in personal property. They're only going to protect $1,000. So, what is personal property? Everything realistically, but including cash, money, and bank accounts, checking accounts, saving account, things like that. But of course, all your furniture. I have a laptop here. I have a screen over there, my camera. All this is part of my assets. So as long as it doesn't go over either of those numbers, depending on the situation, you're okay. Then the trustee doesn't want. Remember, the trustee is looking above the numbers. So in this case, personal property, if you don't own a home, then the numbers increase to $4,000. So let me highlight that here for you. So if you're a renter, $4,000 is protected. How is that $4,000? Like I said, could be cash, could be personal property, etc. Let's go over personal property for a second. I know you paid a lot for your sofa. I know you paid a lot for your bed, but all this stuff is used. So everything is fair market value. And what I mean by fair market value is basically Craigslist values. Like I tell clients, I go, whatever you would sell this for on Craigslist, that's what it's worth. Whatever you would sell it for at a garage sale, that's what it's worth. That's all fair market value is. So keep that in mind. I know you owe $1,000 on your bedroom set and you paid $3,000 for it. It's probably not even worth $1,000 today. If a year's gone by, if it's worth $200-$300, I'd be shocked. So keep that in mind. Fair market value, the same thing applies to cars and everything else. It's whatever the market dictates it is worth. But just keep in mind that wild card exemption, that the numbers change if you own a home or don't own a home. And if you're watching and you're in other states, look into that because sometimes there are wild card exemptions where they even allow the equity that's left over in your house to maybe apply it to something else. Maybe not the full amount, maybe partial. I can't think of any states right now, but you see how that could benefit to you. Florida, because we have the unlimited homestead exemption, we don't have that, but at least we have the difference between if you own a home or don't own a home. There is some additional protections. Now, finally, if you are taking the paralegal courses or legal studies courses and with your university or college and you're using my textbook, like everyone else, use these videos, take advantage of them. They work well to better explain the process. Of course, I explain that in my textbook as well. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, even if you're not a pro se debtor, you're a paralegal or legal studies student, likewise, you can jump in on the conversations and post any questions or comments you have. All right. So that is it for my home state, Florida. Any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the comment section below. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Hurricane seasons are coming already, and I'm already terrified since my car was totaled last one and my camper should have been totaled. I blogged about that too. So please be careful and heed all warnings, everybody.